Hi everyone, welcome to our Innovators Toolkit. This is the last of the semester. I think we've had 3 so far. Last one with Natalie Foley from Pure Insight. And now for our final guest, we have Annie Brown, founder of Lips. She was on our AFS earlier today, so I'm getting a lot of Annie, which is great. So a lot of content for you all this week. She's going to walk us through, for her Innovators Toolkit, a workshop on building more inclusive tech products. And I'll hand it off to Annie to share her screen and show us what she means by that.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for having me. You're doing such a good job with all these, organizing these. So, could you give me permission to share screen? I think it's just a button next to the share screen button.
Just as you said, I was doing such a good job with the tech.
No, you're just still doing a good job.
All right, that should be good. Can you do it?
Okay, cool. All right. Yep, we are good to go. That's my imaginary bunny, Cinnabon. He's on my screen. I just pretend that I have a bunny. Okay, so let's go to view page display. Oh, full screen. Okay. Okay, can you see that all right? Okay, working? Okay, cool. All right, so this is, myself, I am a graduate of William & Mary. I graduated in 2010. I did women's studies with a focus on women's and LGBTQ economic history. Basically, I launched Lips as a campus publication while I was at William & Mary, and then through my journey, decided to turn it into a digital platform. And so we are a blockchain-enabled social commerce platform for women in the LGBTQ community. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. Just a little bit about Lips and kind of where we're at. We're on Instagram at Lipzine. Be sure to give it a follow. We've been featured in Forbes and Huffington Post. We've been in a few accelerators. Most recently, we joined the Headstream Accelerator, which focuses on youth tech. So, as many of you watching know, the internet is not necessarily the most inclusive place. This is especially true of social media, and that's why we created Lips. So Lips, we're addressing these 4 factors, and myself personally, low self-esteem, body image, those are big issues for myself growing up, and I know that they're big issues for other young women and men growing up, and it doesn't go away, when you're in high school. It continues on. And so, for me, it was important for me to use my marketing, business, and technology skills to give back and help young women and people of every gender to kind of use art and self-expression to boost their self-esteem. But when we started Lips with that goal, we found that it was very hard to accomplish our goal with the way that the internet exists now. One of the biggest things we face is bias censorship, as well as harassment and plagiarism. But the bias censorship, so this ad you see here, this is from one of our friends, a brand called Unbound Babes. They're a women's health company, and their ads were censored, including this one, which obviously is not very offensive, pretty PG, but their entire account has been deleted multiple times, and they're not allowed to advertise on Facebook or Instagram. So just a little bit more about, this as a bigger issue. These are just a few of the headlines. This one, Instagram shadow ban on vaguely inappropriate content is plainly sexist. We were able to contribute to that one, actually. you know, give Lips's perspective on that, and also what we're doing to solve that. The one I think is probably the scariest is the women are pretending to be men on Instagram to avoid sexist censorship. So basically what that means is that women are taking their accounts, and typically, because even on Instagram, your brand even has a gender. So like Lipzine, if I go to my preferences, it'll say, you know, what's your gender, and it'll come up female. And so if you change that to male, what we found is that the engagement goes up, less of your posts are blocked. So basically the idea is that that was just one example of how these algorithms are preferential towards white straight males. And I'll talk a bit more about that, the algorithm piece of that and the technology side of that as we get into this. Okay, so these are just a few examples. So users, basically the users that I'm talking about are not necessarily people selling anything on Instagram, or you know, not necessarily influencers, but they're people that are you know, just using social media to express themselves. And that's a part of being healthy. Happy is expression, because we found in our research that creating art is just one piece of, you know, mental health and art therapy, but actually sharing it is a big part of where that healing actually takes place. So I'll just read one of these. My account has been blocked from appearing on hashtags I use to promote my work for the past 6 months because it's body positive and women in plus size bodies, even though I don't break any of IG's rules. So the hashtags is really interesting, because if you use the hashtag lesbian or LGBTQ or bi, or I think even body love, what it does is, instead of looking at those as you know, larger categories for more nuanced interpretations of what those hashtags are, Instagram just blocks the hashtag overall. So actually, if you go on Instagram, and it sometimes turns it on, it sometimes turns it off, but basically at any given time, lesbian, body love could be a blocked hashtag. So if I'm somebody who's using the hashtag body love for my body positive post, that post won't be seen by other users. So this is just an example of advertisers. So like the middle quote is again from Unbound Babes, and it's interesting because I think a lot of people think, oh well, it's just blanket. They're just, you know, banning anything that's slightly sexual, which is a problem in itself. But they actually aren't. It's specifically women's sexuality and non-heterosexual sexuality. So there's erectile dysfunction medication, penis pumps, manscaping razors. You'll see these ads on Facebook, and you'll see them in places where women's health companies aren't allowed to advertise. So this just points to kind of the inequality. 73% of LGBTQ content online is flagged as inappropriate. Keywords currently banned from social media include vaginal health, lesbian, bisexual, and gender. And here are a couple more ads. It's actually, the website's called approvednotapproved.com, and you can actually play a game, and you can guess which ads are approved and which ads aren't. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, I'll give you a hint. Any of the women's health ads, if you click not approved, you'll probably get the answer right. So how can you build a better internet for these groups and more inclusive internet? Well, there's a few different ways that I'll go through and examples of companies doing it. Specifically, what Lips is doing is we're using a combination of UX, AI, and blockchain to address some of those issues I mentioned on the first slide, because those are the technologies that really get the heart of where some of these problems lie. So yeah, so we're trying to build application for women in the LGBTQ community without the unhealthy aspects of internet culture. So that's our MVP, our live website. Our wireframes, we're actually moving into designing the prototype, which is the funnest part. So this isn't the final design. This is just like where we're kind of putting things. And then just moving into blockchain, I realize this is going to be one of the more graphic presentations of all the alumni, but that's what I'm here to do. So basically, LIPS, and we talked a little bit about this in my talk this morning about what is a blockchain. And blockchains are super interesting because it's a technology that I think a lot of people associate with cryptocurrency, but it actually has a lot of social implications, and I think has a big role to play in balancing the equality of the internet. I think security is a big part of that. Anonymity is a big part of that, and the ability to own your content, which results in a more consentful tech experience. So applying that concept of consent and then moving it towards technology. Let's skip over that. This is an example of a LIPS user. When she was posting her art pictured behind her, she was getting harassed because she was talking about in her post how her art helped her heal from her sexual assault. And by being open about that, she invited in harassment. So this is just an example, one of millions of examples of why, you know, incredible creators like this young woman deserve a better internet and better technology. So besides LIPS, what are some other creations or other technologies that are being created to build a more inclusive internet? Because I think the best way to build a more inclusive internet is to start with examples and then kind of see what they're doing, be inspired by them, and kind of think about how you can apply that to your own technology. So Vault is super interesting. They are using blockchain basically by, you know, in the Me Too movement, the equality of, or the ability to report instances of sexual harassment, sexual assault are more socially accepted, but not really socially accepted. So, you know, how do you report these without putting yourself at risk of being fired, of being socially exiled at your company? And that's what Vault is doing. So basically, you can submit your complaint to a Vault. It's in a blockchain, so that means that it's hyper secure. There's no way somebody could hack that, hack into it, see your data, and then when you're ready to expose that information, you can see it, or you can choose to share that with the HR department. So that's just one way blockchain is being used to solve some of these instances of harassment in the workplace. And, you know, I think just going back to the topic of this speech, I think one of the really great ways to build a more inclusive internet is to, or more inclusive technologies, is to really ask marginalized groups. So for example, women in the workplace, or, you know, maybe people of color in the workplace, and say like, what's your biggest issue that you're facing right now? And, you know, a lot of them would say, well, I don't feel comfortable reporting racism or sexism to my HR department. And that's where you get these solutions like Vault, because for the longest time, people in technology weren't asking those questions of marginalized groups. And to a certain extent, they're still not, but it's happening at more common rates. And honestly, I think that's really where innovation is going. You know, we've gotten to a certain part of technology that's incredible, but in order to really push innovation forward, I think we have to start bringing in more people and including more people in the conversation. This is another example I really love. This is Femme Inc. I actually did my honors thesis at William & Mary on advertisements in Cosmopolitan magazine and kind of the messages that they were sending. And I was shocked when I found this this white paper. So if you go to their website, you'll be able to find this white paper, because they said that while there have been, numerous, probably thousands of papers written on representations of women in print media, there are very limited studies. In fact, they were one of the first studies on representations of women in internet advertisements. And I think a big part of that is because internet advertisements are so good at just blurring in with content that you don't really notice them. And so what they did is they did a study on this in conjunction with Google. And then in that process, they were able to come up with some research that pointed them towards how to create algorithms that better represented women in ads, and also didn't target hypersexualized ads to men, and didn't target basically like self-esteem lowering ads to women, because those are what the algorithms were doing at the time. And they so they built this algorithm, and they actually sold it for a lot of money to a large advertising platform company. So now their algorithms are being used across the internet to help prevent some of the more negative aspects of internet ads. This one I really love. This is Shokri. They're based in India, and they are using Google API. So they're using a technology that already exists, but they're using it in a way that speaks to the needs of marginalized people. So, like, I don't think, unless you talk to a woman in India, you would have specifically thought of this as a need for using like the Google's AI technology. But what they're doing is they're creating a system or a technology map that basically allows people to report sexual assault or violence or harassment against women on a map in real time, so that women in India can access that and then actually see like where these incidents are happening, either to avoid them or to make sure they're accompanied, or, like we were talking about before, systemically change that. Why is this happening here more than another place? So I really love their technology. Also, their Instagram is very cool. And I just think they've done a great job of, finding a need and then using existing technology to improve that. Okay, and I think this one kind of is a great example of the overall problem of why inclusivity, I wouldn't say it's hard in technology, because it's really not, because, you basically the solution is to include more diverse voices, but not just diversity of colors and genders and sexualities, but also diversity of thinking. So we were talking about how humanities is so important, because if I go into business as a woman and I say, oh, well, I'm a woman in business, so that fixes all the problems, but I don't actually understand the systemic problems that face women, it's going to limit me as an entrepreneur trying to help women customers. And also, it's going to limit me as a white woman to not see injustices or marginalization that exist out of my own frame, because I won't necessarily think to look there. So this is a great example. This woman, I always pronounce her last name wrong. Her first name is Joy. She's a researcher at MIT. And she was a pioneer in the inclusivity of technology movement, because she did a study that showed basically like self-automated vehicles were hitting people of color. And the first instinct of the engineers were like, oh, well, you know, something's broken. We'll just have to tweak a few things in here and there. It still wasn't working. And she studied this and found that it wasn't the machinery or the technology itself that was working exactly how they wanted it to. It was the data sets they were putting into the technology. So the majority of coders for the AI were white. And so they were choosing white images to show the computer to teach them what a person is. And so because they had that limited data set, the computer, you know, it doesn't know better. It only knows what you feed it into. It was only seeing white people as people, which is a big problem, especially
problematic.
for car. And so Joy, she created the Algorithmic Justice League. And as you can see here, it's a movement towards equitable and accountable AI. So basically what it's saying is like, this is a very powerful technology. We can't just rapidly develop this technology. We have to, you know, build it, but make sure that we're building it inclusively, and make sure that we're making sure that AI isn't harming, you know, the communities that we're aiming to serve. And this last slide I like because this speaks to something that's really important about LIPS, that I think, you know, sometimes the trans community gets bundled in with the LGBTQ community, but they do have very specific needs and issues and experiences. And so this study that I quoted here actually went out to see what is a trans technology. And so they found their specific one they were looking at was Tumblr. And they said, okay, is Tumblr a trans technology? And the three things it would need to meet is, can users change over time? Can I change my profile? Can I, you know, customize it to fit my needs? Also, embrace queer aspects of multiplicity, fluidity. And the last one is uphold policies and an economic model that embraces adult content, adult or erotic content. And why that's important is because, you know, if your sexuality is part of your identity, it's hard to fully express yourself without talking about sex. And so that's why they said, well, Tumblr was a trans technology, but when it created its 2018 policy changes, which basically made the policies of what's allowed and what's not when it comes to adult content much more strict, then it became not a trans technology anymore. So I really like that study because what it's doing is it's taking research to pointing to practical solutions of what we can do to improve technology to make it more inclusive. Okay, so yeah, I think, you know, just in conclusion, I think diverse teams are incredibly important, especially when it comes to AI, because that's what the data sets we are. And I also think just, you know, starting to think about innovation not as just technology, but about the philosophies and the perspectives that we bring into our solutions, because I think that's really where, you know, world-changing innovation is going to happen. So lipzine.com is our website. That's my email. Feel free to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. DMs are open. And also, you know, if you have any questions about any of the companies I mentioned, feel free to ask.
Awesome. Wow, thank you so much, Annie. This is a great presentation. I have one question, you know, just before we wrap up, which is, let me switch you back. Oh, there you go. You did it. Switch you back, because we have different, it's funny because we have different, with every guest, it gets like a different level of tech sort of, you know, familiarity and enthusiasm. And so sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, like I got this. Sometimes people are like way ahead of me. It just varies. So But you're definitely up on the Zoom and the social media and all that stuff. So thank you for bringing that as well.
Oh yeah, of
Uh,
course.
it really struck me when you talked about how, we've had so much technological innovation and so much progress, and now it's really about, what's behind that and kind of, making it all, progress and advancing and, better and faster, but also just more equitable, and, what
Mhm.
direction do we take that? And so I was wondering, how would you advise somebody who's going, wants to work in tech, like really into blockchain, really into AI, and like, how would you like, how would you advise them to kind of get, for lack of a better word, the competencies and the understandings that they would need to be, an equitable partner in that movement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing to do is make sure, whether you're an entrepreneur building your company or if you're on a team or a member of a team, just always keep pushing for inclusion of different types of folks, because there will be some bosses, at tech companies that say, oh well, it's all about merit, and it's all about, if they're the best one at the job interview, then they're the ones getting the job. I don't look at the color of their skin or their gender. But the fact is that, one, you are looking at the color of skin and their gender. That's just going to happen. Two, you're going to have unconscious biases on that. And three, their backgrounds and their experience is actually what's adding to their resume. And, so I think if you're an entrepreneur and you're building a team and you say, okay, well, I just want the best blockchain engineer out there. So I'm going to go to Harvard. I'm going to go pick their number one and then, bring them onto my team. The problem with that is that you're not recognizing diversity, or more specifically, marginalization, or the experience of being discriminated against as a benefit to the company. And because what that does, like I said, like women's studies, I felt was kind of my edge in business, because I was able to look at problems differently,
Mm.
because I understood discrimination and inequality. So I think that's one thing, is just surround yourself, whether you're an entrepreneur or you need to talk to your boss, like make sure you're surrounded by diverse perspectives and diverse backgrounds. I also think another one is just, do the homework and do the reading. So that might mean, following accounts on Instagram and seeing, articles that they post, or, going on JSTOR and researching social inequality and technology. Like we were actually just at our last tech meeting, we were figuring out who still has a JSTOR account, because we need to go look up a bunch of articles. And so like, don't think, and especially for women, you'll be told like, oh well, if you don't have a heavy technical background, how are you in technology? It's not about having those deep technical skills, as much as it is understanding their impact and understanding, how you can use those to help people.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so great. I'm so excited for people to see it.
Yay!
I will tag you and Lips in them, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah, please.
Awesome. But thank you so much, Annie. Really appreciate you being here with us today.
Oh yeah, thank you, and feel free to reach out anytime. I'm sure we'll be in touch, and yeah, really happy to do this. This was fun.
Awesome. Well, take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.